Welcome, boys and girls. This is Module 4, Topic 2, Lesson 1, Even or Odds, where we're going to be using arrays to organize our outcomes. So let's get started first with the getting started. Tossing coins. It says, suppose you and a partner flip a coin at the same time. What are the different outcomes that could occur? Use an array to list the possible outcomes of tossing two coins into the air at the same time. So using this array below, so notice that this table is actually called an array, and we're going to use this to organize our outcomes. So student one, say that's us. That's us. We have one coin, and the possible outcomes are heads or tails. And student two, let's say that's our friend. They also have the same coin, and they have a heads and a tails, of course. So if we roll them at the same time, it's possible that I get a heads, and my friend also, they possibly could roll a heads as well. It is also possible that if I roll a tails, that my friend rolls a heads. And that is what these outside labels represent in our array. It is also possible that my friend rolls the tails while I roll a heads. And then also it is possible for us to both flip a tails. And there's our array of all of our possible outcomes. Question 2, it says use your array to write the sample space for tossing two coins at the same time. So using that array, our sample space would look like this. Remember those braces? And each of those, I'm just going to put in parentheses. So my results could be heads. My result could be tails heads. My results could be heads tails, which essentially are the same. Or my result could be tails. And being that these are the same outcome, you technically don't have to write it twice. You can write it just one time. All right, number 3. It says conduct this experiment for 30 trials and record the results. Calculate the experimental probability of each outcome in the table. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do this experiment for you, and then I will be back with those results. And so you can see how I'm doing this. I'm not making up numbers. I'm actually flipping coins. So I've got tails, heads, tails, heads. All right, I'm going to keep flipping. I will be back. Alrighty, I am done with the experiment. Now I'm going to put in my results. So for both coins landing on heads, that resulted in a total of 5 flips. Heads, tails, I got that 6 times. Tails, heads, I got that 7 times. And tails, I got 12 times. So the probability of each of those for heads, or for both coins landing on heads would be 5 out of 30 because I spun it or rolled my dice 30 times. For heads, tails would be 6 out of 30. For tails, heads, that's 7 out of 30. And for tails, 12 out of 30. And now being that we don't have a class to compare this to, a class number to compare it to, we're going to skip this column for now. And being that we are skipping the class comparison, we'll also skip question B, being that we have nothing to compare to. Let's go on to question 4. It says, which probability is more accurate? The probabilities from the experiment with you and your partner, so what I just did, or our class probabilities explain your reasoning. So now, we learned in the last lesson that the more simulations that you have, the closer you are to the actual probability. So if it was between my 30 coin flips and a class full of coin flips, well, the class would have more if we combine it all. So most likely, the class's probability would be closer to the actual probability. So I just typed the class's probability because more coin flips will land you closer to the actual probability. And question number 5, it says use your table to predict the actual probabilities of each outcome. Create a probability model table to display your predictions. So remember, to make a probability model, it is simple. Let me outline it in black. You're creating a real quick table, so do as I do. So we've got our table, and within our table, we're going to have our outcome and then the probability of that outcome. So outcome on the top and the probability on the bottom. And then in there, you're just going to have your 4 outcomes, which were heads, 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 tails, tails, heads, and tails, tails. So heads, 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 tails, tails, heads, and tails, tails. And here we're predicting the actual probabilities. So we're not writing in our experimental probability, but what we think should happen. So being that all of these options have an equal chance or fair chance of being selected, that probability would simply be 1 out of 4 for each. Each of these has a 1/4 chance of being selected. Alrighty, and that concludes this activity. That concludes the getting started. Now we will continue our lesson working with arrays and experimental probability. I will see you in the next video.